Hello, everyone. Welcome to CMO Therapy, a podcast that's hopefully going to help you navigate your way through your marketing journey. Because let me tell you, being a marketing leader is no walking the park. In each episode, we dive headfirst into the world of marketing, where uncertainty, tight budgets, and fierce competition are just the beginning of the roller coaster ride. But guess what? You are not alone in this. Why go solo when you can tap into the powerhouse of insights from some of the most awesome marketing leaders in the game? And look, the title might include the word therapy, but we are not just talking about challenges here. We are tackling them head on. So join us as we deep dive into the nitty-gritty, share war stories, and unlock secret strategies. And get ready for no holds barred conversations, because sometimes I have no filter. So if you are a chief marketing officer, a marketing lead, or someone just looking to up their marketing game, then I am so glad that you are here with us today. And today I am so glad and very pleased to have the very awesome Lauren here with me. Lauren, do you want to do a quick introduction for the audience?
Yeah, hi. I loved all of what you've said. War stories, uncertainty, fierce competitions. We're going on the front lines. So yeah, happy to be here to unpack some of those stories. So I'm Lauren Berkemeyer. I'm Chief Marketing Officer of YuLife. So we're quite a disruptive and very inspiring employee benefit, bringing together insurance, health, life insurance with an everyday wellness experience, all wrapped around an incredible piece of tech that gamifies healthy behavior. So we're helping drive a lot of value to not only a market that has been very traditional for a very long time, but really changing how you value, perceive, and engage with your benefits and engage with these important services like insurance. So that's me. I've been with YuLife 6 years, building the business from the ground up. So I can definitely hone in on that 0 to 1 territory and then the scale up challenges. And yeah, we've had a lot of learnings through that. And my background, interestingly, before being in the benefits insurance space, was actually in media. And so that's how I moved here from New York in 2010 to work for the Wall Street Journal. And so a lot of that experience was around driving big, large advertising programs globally and how we would basically build the business outside of the US. So still quite disruptive, part of a bigger business, but I would say that my experiences have always been very much on that entrepreneurial, very kind of startup energy, and also kind of I talk a lot about underdog territory as a marketer. So how you get cut through when you're not the one with the biggest budgets, when you're not the one, with the largest market share. And there's really clever ways to do that.
I love that. I love that. Oh my goodness, I've got so many questions, just even off the back of your introduction. Where to start? So we had a bit of a chat and we came up with the title of this podcast, which is Boiling the Ocean Won't Fill Your Funnel. And the reason for that we chose that was because, like we were kind of discussing, too many marketing teams still think that kind of more activity, more channels, more noise that you create is somehow going to create kind of the best results. And when actually often what it does is just create more spend the budget, or make the team confused about where best to focus. And it has an impact, I think, on how you look externally as well. So that's what we're going to dig into. We're going to get into why it's more about precision, why it's more about relevance, why you need that real deep understanding of your audience and where they are. And that's so much more powerful than just trying to be everything for everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So let's start off with that then. Why do you think that marketing teams still kind of default to that, boil the ocean approach? Is it just kind of habit, or is it that pressure when the CEO pops his head in the office and says, why are we not on TikTok type approach?
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting one. I think the aggressive, I'm going to use the word aggressive in a way that's like quite hunting, but the mentality of driving high volume of leads is very much where a lot of like the genesis of a lot of marketing KPIs started. So it became like very quickly a high volume game where success was measured by volume rather than quality. And I think that just creates, a real negative spiral in the fact that you end up just wasting a lot of money, but you also don't. There was an interesting, as I was like thinking about this topic, which I talk about a lot, and I've been talking about it for about 10 years. So even in the changing world, the principles have applied forever. Gartner came out with a study at the end of 2025. So, and I'm also like not looking at any research at the moment that goes beyond 6 months because the world has like completely flipped upside down. About 3/4, so 73% of B2B buyers actively avoid suppliers that send irrelevant outreach. So what is interesting is that when you are boiling the ocean and when you're trying to just essentially drive high volume, do many, many things, you're actually probably eroding your trust at the top of the funnel. And you're almost then hindering how someone could ultimately interact with you because they literally will disconnect from you. And I think people don't recognize that every moment, and I talk a lot about like every touch point needs to be consistent, needs to deliver value, need to give more than you take in a way that you are building up trust over time. Because oftentimes in B2B is such a considered purchase. It's not, I mean, insurance, it was transactional till YuLife popped into the equation, but it's a lot of it is value driven and it's a considered purchase. And so that foundational trust and that giving someone value before you take from them and try to get them to buy from you is so critical now. Interestingly, and this applied to the last business I helped build, which was called LifeWorks, which was a mental health business. And now YuLife, similar methodology is that I invested very immediately before even looking at like the distribution channels and before even looking at the spend. Don't even care about your budget. You have a pound to spend. What are the fish you want to catch, right? So not every fish is equal, right? And oftentimes you're also fishing in the wrong ponds, which can create a lot of wastage. And so really going back to the key principles, and I think in this world of AI, we're also big time going back to first principles. A lot of marketers actually don't know who their ICP is. It's shocking to me.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So there's this real righteous attitude of like, we're going to go fishing and get all the fish. And then we're awesome because we drive loads of MQLs. And that whole accountability on the quality of those MQLs and that it all starts with how you're segmenting and what your data looks like from the start. Because if your data is flawed, that will completely erode your funnel and it'll completely hinder your efficacy of like any inbound and outbound momentum.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by this. I want to go back to that stat that, oh my goodness, it floored me a little bit when you said that. So 73% that of B2B buyers kind of are ignoring the outreach, right? Yeah. So now think about those occasions, and I'm sure you've had many when you're sitting in that meeting with sales. We're talking about, our pipeline targets for the quarter, and we're talking about tactics and then how to, increase the number of inbound leads that we've got coming in. And one of the first kind of suggestions is, well, can we do some sort of proactive outreach? Is there a way that marketing can kind of help with building some sort of sequences or, whatever that we can start to reach these people? Because that's the quickest way. In their minds is, that's the quickest way. How do you have those conversations then when going against that kind of 73% where you're saying, we have to kind of like warm them first?
I mean, it's really all about where are they, like, if you try to get married too fast, people are going to run away, right? So where are you with these prospects in your relationship? So it's all relative to like, has that individual, how do you make your interaction the most relevant for that individual? Because the minute it's irrelevant, like the volume I was trying to quantify this, but I'm going to guess I'm getting 20 to 50 times more outbound to me, and they're 99% terrible. And a lot of that is because it's AI generated. Now, where we're seeing impact on an outbound, because a lot of like marketing's role in outbound, if you're not actually like, I'm going to use like old school terms, dialing for dollars on a sales level. So if you are relying on marketing for that initial momentum to drive the qualification of the MQL, you have to then pass it off. You have to be solving a problem for that person receiving that email. So for example, like we know that we sell health insurance, we partner with Bupa. We know that there's a lot misunderstood about health insurance. It's quite an antiquated, complex purchase. You're dealing also with people's personal health, so there's a lot of risk there and responsibility on the line, but it's not an easy purchase. And so we know that we've become a bit of a guide for small businesses on how to optimize their benefits, how to support their staff. So I have to lean into basically being a bit of that guide Sherpa. It also aligns to our mascot, which is a giraffe called Yugi, that is like your guide to our universe in YuLife. But effectively, what we did with health was create, it's so simple, like a very clear buyer's guide, but it had proprietary research. So it wasn't like, how do you buy health insurance, and makes people feel inferior. It was giving value to, these are some of the challenges. We did some YouGov surveys. We got some great research from Bupa. So we were addressing like clear pain points, and that you then use as an outbound sequence. It's a downloadable ebook. It's just very basic, but it's all was very targeted. The thing is that we knew we wanted to target the tech sector because this is a big challenge in terms of burnout at the moment within the tech sector, SME tech sector. And so it was a very tailored piece of comms, but that's an example of when I would come back, it would be relative to, who's the audience that we're targeting, back to the data. What do they want to learn about? How have they interacted with us before? The other thing is, like, if someone has interacted with us 6, 7, 8 times, which often happens because we run a lot of events, etc., they're at a different level of the relationship. So we automate outbound sequences based on how many times we've dated, if that makes sense, and how much trust has already been built. Whereas top of the funnel, the sort of how-to ebooks is quite important, because then there's a perceived value to us guiding this buyer into a complex market that they don't understand as well.
Yeah, I love this example. It hits on so many kind of the points that we sort of opened up with around the topic. Like like you about understanding your audience, like having that deep understanding of your audience. And you can't create all of those ebooks and that content without understanding. Like, can you tell me a little bit more about like how you do that?
So we've spent a lot of effort in analyzing all of our customer calls. I mean, we're using a lot of AI for this now. So if you think about the volume of sales calls, customer calls, QBRs, pitches, there's a high volume of sentiment and understanding of what makes the buyer, what makes our buyer tick, what they're interested in. We early on, and there's different methodologies, but we early on put a very disciplined methodology around Medic in place with training the sales team. We also follow that on how we actually track our data, so we know pain points we're solving that we can then filter in through even when we land the customer in terms of the QBRs. So there's like one customer view of that life cycle. But I think it's really around us really knowing what makes our ICP tick, what is relevant. I mean, now I know it so well that it's like, it's multifaceted. So for example, the way that you connect, and this is where you really need human touch discovery that AI is not going to do. Like, I met with a chief people officer of an agency last week. I know, because we have incredible use case with Havas Media, right? Along with many agencies. I know these use cases. I can spit them out. That we make sure that the sales team are also trained on in the follow-up. But a lot of it, if you're not a business starting day one now, and I can talk about that as well when you don't have all that social proof, but building off of that social proof and that account intelligence. And that account intelligence is quite interesting, because once now we have a knowledge base at YuLife that everyone's feeding into to really generate account intelligence very effectively pre-call, to be able to understand not only like what is available on the web about that business, because that's table stakes, like this CEO is investing in the culture, this is the benefits they offer, etc. But to be able to lean into thousands and thousands and thousands of transcripts to then define how you relate to that person, what kind of questions to ask, is quite powerful. And the other layer on that is also just going back to basic discovery that complements that account intelligence, to understand individually what makes that person tick. Because oftentimes I was thinking about, like, as you think about ICP, you end up sometimes going too focused on industry or company size.
Yeah.
Whereas there's a whole other level of the propensity of that individual based on their psyche, based on what they are motivated by. And in our space, selling to a lot of HR buyers, about 1 in 4 are your like real trailblazers. When I say trailblazers, because there's like operational excellent HR leaders, but the individuals who, want to innovate, they're kind of classified more as the entrepreneurial, Those are who I want to find. Those are who I want to find along with the industry, along with the segment of the size of the business. So there's all those kind of factors at play.
We, one of my clients, we target the chief compliance officer, and our kind of, ICP, and then the persona that sits within that ICP is the enlightened CCO, or chief compliance officer, which is exactly that. It's that kind of real, the trailblazer, or But we know that there is, roughly kind of 1 in 4, 1 in 5, whatever. So,
and that goes back to like the other phrase I've said is with boiling the ocean, like the ocean is fine, don't try to boil it. Like, let's move on.
Yeah.
But it's the same principle. Because if you think about 1 in 4 are those trailblazers complemented by your industry understanding and the segment that you want to attack, whether that's SMEs, mid-market, enterprise. If you do a blanketed approach, then think about the wastage there. Think about how many people you're then trying to become your friend, and they're never going to go on a play date.
Yeah. I love that. And one of the things that I've kind of picked up actually from everything that you've been saying, I think is quite interesting. And I hear this all the time about being relevant, but I think, being relevant is kind of multifaceted, right? You're looking at being relevant in terms of, are you speaking the right language and hitting those pain points of your ICP, of the people, your audience, the people you're trying to reach. Mm-hmm. And then relevant being point in time, as in where are they on that buying cycle. So, we know that they, all of these things are kind of a concern or a pain to them, but they're not always a concern every minute of every day. They go through kind of like stages of it, right? So like, how do you, I know that's quite a big question, but like, what do you think about that? Like, how do you sort of manage that within your business and your marketing strategy?
Yeah. Love the question about relevance, because it's just woven into like every single thing we have to do. Okay, so I'm going to give you another stat that I found, which is cool. Okay, and then I'll answer the question.
I love these stats.
So this is McKinsey. I went on the Gartner McKinsey route because I want to sound more credible. Okay, so 81% of consumers B2B buyers ignore marketing messages they consider irrelevant. Ignore them. That makes sense. I'd actually think it would be more. And 1 in 4 are less likely to purchase from a brand after receiving generic communications. And this goes back to my point earlier, is if you send out something that is so bad, like my 99% on my high volume of people trying to sell me stuff now,
yeah,
you will hurt that trust and hurt that relationship. So I think there's a real reality, and I think it's even more amplified with AI, that huge amount of skepticism to outreach, huge amount of skepticism, more so than it ever been. Even so that like, I am more skeptical. I mean, I've always been skeptical. I try to be nice when people try to call me. I don't know where everyone gets my phone number, but the volume and the lack of personalization and the lack of relevance feels even more lazy now than it did 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Because there is no excuse that someone can't, well, one, they typically say, hi, Laura, but there's no excuse that they don't give something, they can do that in like 5 minutes with Claude, not even 30 seconds.
Yeah. Or LinkedIn or whatever.
Or LinkedIn or whatever. Yeah, it doesn't even have to be, you don't even need Claude. Like you can literally Google my name as an example. So no new news that, 95% of buyers are not in the market looking, and how do you make them know you? And a lot of, I think about multi-threading a lot because I think about like, how do you get your own team to be your brand ambassadors? How do you get your customers to be your brand ambassadors? How do you get your founders or your leadership team, which is also your own team, to be your brand ambassadors? How do you kind of milk, like there's this, I go back to that age old question, if I didn't have any money, how do I get YuLife everywhere, or perceived to be everywhere, to those 95%, right? And then obviously there's tactics you need to do to target the right people at the right time. But the relevance piece, I still believe that people want to buy from brands they connect to and like. So I think it's really important to show up in the market as someone solving a problem, but also someone that you want to work with. So in terms of trying to sell too fast, it's interesting because we used Gong for years. We've now transitioned to Fathom, but irrespective of the tool, like for transcriptions, one of the measurements that both of these tools, these recording tools use is they actually grade you on patience
Mm.
when you talk to when you try to sell something. And too often we're trying to kind of jump to it and not establish that relevance, not establish that connection, not establish that trust. And so, you essentially then erode that opportunity of any future progression. So a lot of it, like, there's so many ways you can create relevance, but I think going back to, what are your using customer, it's basic stuff. Like find the customer stories that resonate, that create that aspiration. So I know if I'm Curve as a customer, I know any single fintech I talk to, I'm going to use Sarah Cox, who's the chief people officer at Curve. Like that is relevant. That doesn't mean like, that's just like, hey, Lucy, like, you know what? What's been really interesting is that, Curve's been supporting their teams with YuLife for like 3 years. And, I'd love to share it with you more information about that. Like softy, relevant. You might not be buying 6 months down the line. You pick up that phone.
Exactly. Yeah.
The other thing about the other example, like just that I want to share about relevance is this is very PR, so less lead gen, but like, what narrative do you want to be a part of? Like where do you want, so it's like, where do I want YuLife to be perceived as like a little bit of an expert, I guess, without being ego? What have we earned the right to authentically own as a story? And I know because at its heart, the investment we've made in building technology that helps people live healthier, happier lives, like literally that is what we do. And you see that through all the Trustpilot reviews, et cetera. That I can then leverage and kind of build and amplify from. So it is, yeah, it's an interesting.
Sorry to interrupt, but I have a tiny ask while you sip that overpriced oat latte. If you're liking CMO Therapy, please hit that follow button and leave a quick rating. It takes 5 seconds tops, and it keeps this marketing madness going. Okay, back to the good stuff. I call that the what do you want to be famous for? So, like when you do the word association game, when you think about, saying a particular brand name and then what word immediately kind of pops to mind. That's what do you want when people say YuLife, what do you want them to kind of immediately say right after?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of like, it's a good one because I mean, a lot of it is like, we talk a lot about joy because a lot of like how you create products that work well and are sustainable is they need to give you like an emotional joy. But the byproduct of that is helping people like live better. And it was interesting when I was thinking about how do I ride, I mean, everyone wants to ride the AI wave, right? But also how do you do this in a way that, not 8, 9 years ago, I was like, how do you ride the employee well-being wave, but don't get into this like well-being washing, or don't get into this greenwashing or AI washing. And so thinking about it, like what was interesting is a couple weeks ago, I ran a YouGov surveys because I was feeling through what people were telling me in the market that there's a lot of people feeling feeling a lot of pressure. A lot of marketers are feeling like loads of pressure. I think there's like quite a lot of imposter syndrome happening too. There's just people not feeling like they're good enough to operate what the future now needs you to operate as in the AI enabled future.
Yeah.
Or present, not even future. And so I was like, okay, what can YuLife? It's a bit like how, without saying that, because how can YuLife authentically own a conversation in this space that underpins how people are feeling? Because that is basically like the ethos of the product. And so it was interesting what transpired through this YouGov survey that I ran was that people are feeling like they are experiencing much more pressure, that the expectations is that they do more now, which is quite interesting because you can operate at a faster pace. You can deploy the AI agents, you can create the systems and the workflows that almost like there was a question, I don't know if you asked me it or came up around what do you do with the time you save? Yeah. And the reality is it's not like they're then going and sitting in the sunshine right now. They're literally like vibe coding, hacking, coming up with another thing, So it's just creating this more optimization. And I think ultimately what we ended up getting a feature in the Daily Mail about this, which was a big testament because it's a lot, because of the reach essentially. So that was really a great win, but that was all around the feeling that how AI is making people feel in terms of their own kind of mental health and well-being.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. That's such a powerful kind of story. But it's really I do want to ask you a question on AI. But before I come on to that, there's something kind of I want to pick up on. Throughout this whole kind of conversation so far, it's really interesting. When we started off the conversation, we were talking about boiling the ocean, which effectively you're talking about channels there, right? Because you're talking about being everywhere. But what's kind of come out very, very loud and clear throughout all of this conversation and every really fantastic answer that you're sort of and case studies and things that you're giving is that it's not so much around the channels, it's actually what you're putting out on those channels that matters. It's the messaging, it's the making sure that you understand the right audience. That all of that comes first, then you pick the channels. Suppose maybe that's then my sort of question to you then is like we've got all of this really sort of like, if you are in a situation where you've got all of the messaging and everything really, really great, or you think you have, because obviously we're always testing, right? And things change. But yeah, we have all this really great messaging. How then do you decide which channels to push it out on? Because there's so many of them. I think just on that, just while you're having a think, but the thing that always, the conversation that always bugs me is where you test a channel, for example. I'm sure you've had this in previous like businesses where you're testing out a channel like I don't know, LinkedIn paid advertising or Google paid ads or something like that, and then you don't get the response that you want that you expected, and then you have the rest of the business kind of coming back and saying, yeah, well, we tried that channel and it didn't work. Well, all of these channels work. They do work. It's like, otherwise they wouldn't exist, right? Email wouldn't exist, or LinkedIn advertising wouldn't exist. The paid channel wouldn't exist. But it's the messaging that you put out on them that is the game changer, right? Is the factor.
Yeah, and my response to this is based on being, I would say, more in scrappy, smaller SME territory right now. So for anyone like listening, we're a business of 150 people, a marketing team of about 10. So this is like a smaller, a sales team. Between our sales and marketing team, it's probably 20, 25 people. So when you are a bigger business, of which I've managed, and you have bigger budgets, interestingly, the decision making is actually more swim lane vibes. So meaning like, okay, I got my paid social performance, I got my performance team, which will manage LinkedIn, PPC, any of the paid, depending on if you're using Meta, if you're using Instagram for your activity. But you'll have a channel strategy, and that strategy will actually oftentimes exist in isolation of your growth like of what your sales team's operating rhythm is. So I actually think that's totally wrong in terms of, that is very common, by the way, that you essentially say, okay, here's your PPC budget, that you're the PPC guy, go ahead, boom, get these leads, here's your KPI, it's these MQLs, we're going to track the conversion, boom, go, right? What happens is that you're basically not optimizing for the campaign. So the thing is, if you're looking on a channel level, which is fine, but you're operating in isolation, like channel by channel by channel, it's a bit of like a disservice. The channels to me are like the distribution. That's not the core foundation of what you actually want to get across. So I go back to the age old of like, how do you tactics start or the campaign start? Like for my example about this health insurance ebook, right? If that only existed as a paid ad, so we needed to use LinkedIn. We need to leverage LinkedIn to be able to drive downloads to new audiences, but we also needed to use it as an engagement tactic with our existing customers to further clarify that we can help them. And obviously not all of them have health insurance with us. Some of them just have life insurance. We then did a whole organic approach with our founders, with our senior leaders. We give, this is what you write from a personalized email perspective on a sales level too. And we did custom automations with like old lists that we knew had engaged previously in health insurance events, but it was all multi-threaded in this. And then we actually produced an event to showcase the data. So then you get more people that you're like, oh man, they've downloaded this. They've also attended this event. This is even warmer. This is even a hotter lead now. So I think it's really about that multi-threading where you actually don't look at the channel in isolation. You look at it in cohesion of all of the distribution, and you actually almost want to say, like, when I joined YuLife, I was like, man, insurance is a mega total addressable market. Like, I love this underdog mission. Like, that was like my vibes. Same thing with marketing. Like, you have to know, what is your total addressable market? What are the channels that feed into that? And what is that bedrock content foundation that fuels that? And naturally, you're going to have always on brand activity. So, but I'm really talking about like driving performance in its optimal way that's very multi-touch, because oftentimes this is such a considered buy.
I absolutely. This is like I'm singing inside. It's music to my ears. And honestly, I absolutely and totally agree with this. And I even think like what you just on what you said on the end about the kind of the always on. I think even the approach to always on can sometimes kind of get a little bit lazy. And exactly what you said, very sort of to channel focus, which I don't agree with either. And I've worked in big companies as well. But I think if you took that approach that we know works so well of the multi-channel kind of fully integrated marketing campaign approach and apply that to always on, all you're doing then is taking that always on and having it as kind of like iterated kind of campaigns. Do you know what I mean? Like you run at for, I don't know, like a quarter or 6 months or a year, because I know with big companies obviously you're not quite as, it's not quite as short term as in kind of, a smaller company. But yeah, even that always on approach is still kind of, you still can do the campaign approach is what I'm trying to say. You can still say, what is that always on message, brand experience or message that we want to put out there, and what channels should we push that out onto? What can we, wake up this morning and be pushing out across the performance channels, like you
Yeah,
said.
exactly. Where it's just sort of treated as a segment.
Yeah.
This holds true really well for us with, I just think now more than ever, it's customer advocacy. Social proof is like the golden currency, like 100, because you can't fabricate it,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
So much so that the effort we put into the last 6 years of building Trustpilot reviews, and this is not to the buyer, this is not to someone we're selling to. So interestingly, because we're basically selling into businesses, and then employees use YuLife and love YuLife, and we basically drive a lot of social proof and advocacy through essentially encouraging the members who the employer buys YuLife, employee then reviews YuLife, and drives this real bottom up advocacy of us then delivering on our promise. And that, to me, that social proof is the foundation of our always on. So everything we're doing, so then because you're also surprised and delighting, because it's multidimensional, because humans are multifaceted, and every review has a different sentiment. Some talk about all the weight they lost, some talk about the amazing customer service, etc. And that then helps us fuel that understanding of the impact that we're driving and delivering on the promise that we're selling to that buyer and creating a relevant opportunity.
Yeah. That's just another channel, isn't it? That those the end customers, the customer advocacy. It's another channel, and I'm assuming that you're putting so much effort into that because you have kind of a clear, what you call it, path or site of success, and how that kind of delivers into this
Yeah, but I think like
achieving your goals.
what would be a disservice is if we just took those reviews as a pat on the back. We've done a great job. Marketing is so much about, amplifying the good that the business has created. So, the experience that we've invested in, which I'm not fully accountable for in terms of the product experience, that needs to then be leveraged and amplified out from a marketing perspective. But if those two things don't link together, then you're creating, marketing in isolation or vanity marketing, which isn't really linking to the core capabilities that you're doing so well delivering.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we are kind of coming up to time. We're going to have to kind of wrap it up, Liz, but honestly, I could talk to you forever. But I do want to ask you one question, and
Okay.
maybe we can do it as a bit of a quick fire question to finish off. But if there was sort of a CMO marketing leader that was listening that sort of had that feeling that they were trying to boil the ocean a little bit, what advice would you give them? What's that kind of, what one change can they make? They can do tomorrow to feel a little less like they're boiling the ocean.
So if they have not fully unpacked a full understanding of all of the existing customers and why they buy, that why they bought, which ones are profitable. I mean, there's basic economics also to customers, but understanding really what makes your customers tick, why they bought, why they're still happy, why they're retaining. I would also, I mean, right now, I just think going into detective mode and going into discovery mode and talking to people, because not what I say, even as we're building out our knowledge base for YuLife, I'm like, not everything is good. Just because it's in there doesn't mean it's exhausted what is in people's brains. So I think now more than ever, what is happening is like we are retrenching. We are basically retreating to using less dialogue because we want the answers immediately. And then we're missing a lot of context and we're missing a lot of foundational understanding. So I think if the market, so what I would say is pick five people from sales you've never talked to, pick 5 people from CS, pick 5 people from your, we have a customer happiness team that do all the app responses. Spend the next 3 weeks interviewing 20 people, set up 10 minutes in each, and you'll learn wonders, and transcribe it and then put it into AI.
Love that. And oh my God, I love the customer happiness team. Is that actually what they're called?
Yeah.
It makes so much more sense than customer success, because success sounds like it's, our success sort of thing. Customer happiness is amazing. Oh my goodness. Sorry. Right. I got hung up
True
on
to the
that.
mission. True to the mission. Yeah. We have so many more. We have so many more where that comes from.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Honestly, it's been absolutely fantastic. And I'm sure
But we didn't even talk about Yoshi.
We didn't. I know. I literally just saw that. I think you need to address Yoshi.
Okay, I mean, man, Lego marketer's dream, B2C. But so Yoshi is sitting behind me. I did not build. My son, my 9-year-old son, and my husband built. And I have now Googled that this should be one of those, like, how many pieces of candy are in the candy jar? So behind me, and you can bleep this out and ask people, is 6,769 Lego pieces to make that Yoshi behind me. So that is like commitment, dedication.
And how long did that take?
No idea. No idea.
That is dedication. Yeah, I literally don't have the patience for that. Like one of my 2 boys absolutely love Lego, and they would adore just sitting there building that for weeks. But
I'm going to show you one other thing quickly. Look at this. Hold on. Wait, where is it? Boom.
Oh my goodness. For people listening, there is also how big are they? What would you say?
Those are like 2.5, 3 feet.
2.5, 3 feet Lego, Mario, Luigi, and Yoshi. That is incredible. Absolutely love it. And yeah, shout out to Lego for that.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks so much, Lauren. Really appreciate your time.
Okay, thanks so much. Take care. Bye.